I'd like to call the zoning
Yep.
bylaw committee to order at 5:03 PM in the evening, January 20th. To start the meeting, I'd like to say the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, everyone.
Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair?
Yes,
Through
sir.
you, Sarah, you taking the, Jen, you taking the minutes?
You got it.
Thanks. Appreciate it.
Yep.
And to start the meeting, Adam Clear has resigned from the committee. He's got a new job, and he's just not going to have the time to sit with us any longer. We'd like to thank him for his service. Public service is an important part of your community, and we strongly recommend that everybody get involved in one form or another. Thank you very much. So we have some homework to go over from our last couple meetings. The first one would be Section 3900, Townhouse Bylaws.
Can I ask a question?
Yes, please, Mr. Eddings.
So I might be a little behind, I'm starting to catch up with this, or whatever, it just needs to come, but, my understanding, I guess, this is my understanding, that today is January 20th,
Yes.
that whatever work this committee has to do needs to be done by February 5th,
Yes.
Oh, before the fifth.
and that town meeting, they said, is gonna be in April,
April 13th.
but all warrant articles need to be in by February 5th?
That is correct. They have to put them in the paper for 3 consecutive weeks, I believe,
So is
and
that the month of February, the month of March, the month of April, because you're talking the middle of April, so 2 weeks? Is that normal course?
So for the planning board zoning articles, what we do, we submit placeholders by the 5th for the town meeting warrant. But at basically the same day, in order to have the planning board public hearing in March, we have to submit the advertisement before the 5th. So we would submit the advertisement, and then they would advertise the 2 dates in February, and then March 2nd, the planning board will convene the public hearing aspect of the zoning bylaw.
So I guess just thinking of it, and this is just me, it goes to what we were thinking last time. When I first came in, the first meeting was in the TDRs, and then it got moved to something else, and they started talking about the solar arrays, and then it went to this new bylaw that was introduced, and I guess for what my discussion was in the last one, when we discussed, and we really haven't come to terms with anything. Now, I guess it's understanding that we have less than, or 2 weeks until we're gonna propose everything to the planning board of what our suggestions. So on the very first meeting, we asked if there could be maps and everything shown to us. Has any of that been produced?
So the maps that were suggested by Sarah Hewins were provided to the committee, and people have the maps, but those maps are, Serped is working on putting together a package for us for the next meeting. So they're taking the information from all those maps to create a sending area map for the committee to look at, as well as criteria that lead up to the creation of the area that's within the map.
So how many meetings are there, I guess I would say, between now and the time that we need to make these recommendations?
So,
Go ahead, please, Jim.
yeah, so we have the 25th coming up, and then if the committee wants to have additional meetings, we can have additional meetings, but probably the final meeting will be February 1st, which is a Monday evening.
So that's tonight and 2 hours. And we're gonna decide the TDR stuff, the signs, the solar, the open space. I mean, I'm just confused, it just needs overloading where we stand right now. I don't know how that all gets done. And I I mean, I can tell you my availability, like even tonight, like our kids and everything else, when we came in here, I was under the assumption that we were forming this committee was gonna form, and we had all the way into the spring to make these decisions, and I didn't know, I didn't know we were gonna get inundated with a bunch of these things, and then have like 5 meetings to determine the amount of material that we would go, because I think it's all scattered everywhere. I really do. I don't see any continuity to where we're starting and where we're going. I mean, I thought in the beginning we might, because we were talking about TDRs, which had to do with density locations in the town and how we want to see the town come. And then, I don't know where it went. And now it seems like we're all over the place, and I don't know where the end is, and I really don't even know where the beginning is anymore. So, is there any way, before we even go, I guess, have a discussion on what the board feels is appropriate that we need to get done, and kind of make the highest priority to the lowest priority, in case we don't make that?
I did have that discussion with Jim. I'm hoping to clear up all 3 of the articles. If we're lucky, we can get through all 3 of them tonight. The signs, the solar, and the townhouse bylaws. And we're going to get the maps hopefully by the 20th, which will give us all a few days to review them before our meeting on the 25th. And the 25th, and should we be able to, or if it's all workable, the last meetings will just be strictly on the TDR, working on the maps and the bylaw.
Because, I mean, early on, we just talked about having people come in. We would talk about it first, and then maybe have other people come in and address it. It just seems like all that's off the table now, and we're gonna have a 45-minute discussion on something, and off to the races we go. And I don't have the answers for it. I'm just simply where my head is. Like, if I am taking the time away to volunteer time like everybody else is, I kind of want to feel like I can do the job. If I feel like I can't do the job, then I question myself, why make the sacrifice? I mean, my kid's got a hockey game right now, and I'm sitting here because I know this stuff's coming close and I want to say something, so I'm not one to want to resign or quit. I just want to voice my concern that I think we're over inundated with everything, and we need to prioritize whatever we can get done and let the rest go to whatever it's going to do.
One of the things that happened is that Bruce, chairman of the planning board had approved a number of these things last year, and they were going to go to town meeting last year, and the town meeting didn't happen, so he said, okay, well, let's have them reviewed by this committee. And it turned out that maybe that wasn't a great idea, nothing against Bruce, but it just took longer to go through those changes than what we anticipated. And I apologize for that, and I don't want to throw Bruce under the bus. Because it was a good opportunity, but it just, a lot of it, there's a lot of things that are new to people, so it takes a little bit more time to go through. I didn't consider that when we.
I don't want to blame on anybody. I just want to say, am I really looking at this?
No,
looking at it? Did I miss something?
Right, well, there's been a lot of discussion, but I think we've got a good foundation set, and I think we can get through 3 of the articles tonight. And the big one that we've already put some time into is not going to go quickly, but hopefully we'll get our major recommendations in anyways before the planning board has to discuss and handle this in the public meetings. Ms. Mello?
I guess my question is, if I understand that the planning board looked at the TDR a year ago, but if there aren't maps now, there weren't maps a year ago. So I don't think that it was ready to go a year ago. And I think, especially for the TDR, that I thought, like Duke said, I thought it was going to be a different process where we looked at all the suggestions, looked at maybe density in certain areas, and, I thought Serpent was going to give us something a long time ago, and that we were going to sit down and work with what they gave us for what is best for Carver. And I don't feel 1 or 2 meetings is going to allow us to digest enough to make a good, solid recommendation, yay or nay. That's just my feeling. It's a lot, and we don't have anything yet.
Just a quick point. So this was not considered, the TDR part of it was not considered last year by the,
Yeah, there was no TDR. There has never
So
been.
there wasn't one.
We have lots of maps, but none of them were specifically transfer of development. right?
TDR wasn't ready to go last year.
well.
It has never
So, see,
been.
the TDR was already on the books, but when they,
Right.
when the TDR bylaw was adopted,
I know it was adopted without maps, but we still
Right,
don't
and
have
I-
maps.
and I consulted with the previous planner, who said, yes, there is a map, but we looked all over the place. Went, clerk's office, we went up in the attic, there, couldn't come across a map that could be considered the TDR map. So, that's when we decided, okay, let's take an in-depth look at this.
Ms. Ewens?
Thank you. I just had a couple of things for Mr. Eldridge through you, Mr. Chair. So the other reason there's such a long stretch between town meeting and when's the final day to submit articles is just, and I'm sure you know this, we have to have council review them too, so that always takes a while. The other thing I wanted to ask you, Duke, did you want this committee to review that petition article that you submitted last year?
I mean, I'm honestly, whatever they want to do, I don't really care. It's like already, that's just like another thing to come in. My whole thing was smart development in this town. And I mean, Adam went for, why do we have 10%? Well, that's a good question. Why do we have 10%? What does that 10% do for us? My whole thing of living in this town, growing up in this town, is like when I came in and started a conversation with Adam, and we talked about it, there was nothing in this town when I got here. So, I mean, at 12 years old, I would be dropped off at the box to go frosting, and if I had to go to North Carver to get a coffee, off I went with the truck to go get a coffee. There was 2 police officers in town, a day shift and a night shift guy. Obviously, we've grown. So, where do we want to put density in this town? So you could say open space development, or you could say TDR. Well, to me, they're both in the same, because if we have an open space development, where do we want it? Where do we want 30, 40 units? Where do we want to preserve as historic? Where do we want to preserve as open space?
Right.
Where do we want to motivate developers that come in this town, that want to do business in this town, and they know exactly where the people want to go?
All right.
Where they want to go.
Mr. Eldridge, I definitely see your point, but this townhouse development law is going to be a big part of that, too. I don't want to fall into the weeds of the TDR, because I would like to get this squared away, recommendations on it, and just get through the 3 that we have tonight, and if we get time, I would like to put more time into the discussion of the TDRs, but I understand your time is limited this evening.
It's not, hey, whatever, you
If-
can
if
do
I
whatever
could
you
just
want, but when you sit there and say that what we're doing is the townhouse development, you're talking about density.
We are, yes.
Okay, so.
Absolutely.
So let's increase density all over the place with the townhouse bylaw by taking away setbacks and moving things around, and then we will go and talk about density. It makes no sense. You might make sense, and you might make sense. It doesn't make sense to me, and I'm only sharing how I feel. So if you want to move on, you're the chairperson, we can move on. I think the first step, and where we did start, was where do we want development to come from? And that's never been answered, and the maps haven't been supplied.
And if I may, Mr. Chair, one quick thing, because I know you want to move on. So the 2 maps that I did supply, that I supplied the committee with, I don't know anything about the SERPED maps, but the one that was from the Open Space and Recreation Plan showed the areas that at that time, the Open Space Committee and the surveys indicated that's where people wanted to preserve space. The open space.
We have a planned
And-
development map also. I
And you
believe.
have that one as well. And sometimes there's a conflict between those 2, not often, but on occasion. So I'm hoping that when Serpent gets those maps, they can put the 2 together and kind of reconcile them, and that'll give you where we preserve and where we don't preserve.
Well, right, our
First
recommendations.
meeting we had, I asked for that map. That map, that exact thing. I said, can we circle the areas like we have and come back in something? and it was told right then and there, I was gonna get it.
You-
And it went on.
At that first meeting we made, we were recommended that Jim Walsh work with SERPED, the Southeast Regional Development Board, to come back with maps. And yes, it has been quite a bit of time since those recommendations were
Don't
made.
put blames, I just was, like I said, there's a direction. If this board wants to make another direction that goes a different way, so be it. I'm just sharing how I feel. I don't know what other people feel.
We're trying to make it more inclusive and cover all our bases. Did you,
Yeah, I was just going to say,
Mr. Mackey?
Bruce Mackey's, since nobody can see my lips on TV. Oh, Jen knows when she takes the notes anyway. But a lot of these went to the planning board before. But we didn't act on them because then the board changed. We didn't bring them to town meeting. So I just thought that it would be a good idea to take some of these and to review it with this committee, so we get a broader based feel from everybody in town here, and then it'll go to our new board members, and then it'll go to town meeting after that.
well, public meeting,
Yeah.
the public
Yeah,
meeting.
well, with the public hearing,
Right.
it'll go to the planning board, public hearing, and then hopefully to town meeting.
We're really trying to make this whole committee part of a larger public hearing where we get the information and we can find out what direction is not only best for the town, but what the townsfolk think.
But I forget what I was going to say. Thrown off.
All right,
But the thing is I was just going to say, we were going to do the TDRs, but we started off with the TDRs, but we needed SERPED to come in to explain it. So and we couldn't get SERPED until our next meeting. So, and I thought that SERPED was an important part for us, for everybody to understand, what the TDRs are and how they expected them to work, and they could explain it to us. I wasn't here. I don't know if anyone was here when TDRs were first.
I was.
Yeah, it was, okay. So Sarah's the only one that may have knowledge on why TDRs came about, but I don't. And so, and I imagine a lot of committee members here don't either. So that's why we spun it around and waited till our next meeting for the TDRs. And then we had these other things to deal with too. So, it was a little messy. If everything was perfect, it would have been nice to go right into the TDRs and get that done. But now we have pressure to get some things done at town meeting. We have a limited time to get those on the warrant. So that's why we have the townhouse bylaw and the solar bylaw and the sign bylaw in front of us tonight.
Yeah, they were all proposed, but pulled back from last time.
Yeah, so, but it would be nice tonight if we could at least do the townhouse bylaw and the large-scale
I think we
and
can
the
get
solar
through.
bylaw at least done tonight, so then
Through
it
all
can
three.
be sent off to the,
Who's putting the pressure to get
It's a
the
ti-
townhouse bylaw put on the docket? That's what I want to know. You say you get pressure, the planning board gets pressure.
well, no,
Oh,
no,
no,
it's not.
I'm not getting pressured. No, there was certain,
Those were the words, those were his words, I'm just asking.
right, I'm not being pressured.
Pressure in that to get on
Mr.
that
Eldridge,
meeting.
I am not being pressured in the least. But there are certain things in the townhouse bylaws that don't line up with some of our other bylaws, and those should be addressed. And we were hoping that this committee, because of the nature of the townhouse bylaws and what it allows in this town, should be addressed by citizens of the community. Ms. Bogart?
all right, I think most to all of us would agree this whole TDR thing is premature. So I would make a recommendation that this kind of be tabled until after town meeting. I don't think it'll be ready for this town meeting, so I would make a
Well, that's
suggestion.
something we can approach at the next meeting when it's on our,
Yeah,
when it's on
I
our
would
agenda.
suggest that be put off till later, And then, when we do get to talking about things, let's take signs first, because that came from me last year when I was on the planning board. And it's a very simple change. It's like a 2-minute discussion. So if we want to actually accomplish something on this committee for once, let's do signs first.
Would you make that motion then? I will entertain that motion.
Yeah, I'll make a motion to take the signs bylaw, I guess, out of order, wherever it was, and talk about it first.
Anybody second?
Second.
Any discussion?
Like I said, this kind of came from me last year, and it was born out of a pet peeve that I have.
Excuse me, Mr. Chair, point of order. We had a
Oh, yeah, we didn't do
motion and a
Yeah,
second on the
so-
floor.
Okay, my bad.
It's okay.
Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor to take signs first, say aye.
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 Aye. All those opposed? Abstentions? No. Do I have it? I have it on my phone, but I don't know if I have it in front of me.
Okay, so signs, like I said. This was my brainchild. It came out of a pet peeve, out of all the illegal portable signs that you see stuck all over town. And I had noticed last year that there were, I don't know how many EMT signs stuck on poles and trees and stuff. So I had asked the planning board and Jim about how we get them down, and it was supposed to be just through zoning enforcement, and I had emailed them, and like 8 months later, they were still up. So I brought this to the planning board, and the only change is to allow someone other than the building commissioner to take signs down. That the building commissioner or the town administrator, well, the building commissioner can do it, or anyone else that the town administrator says can take these movable signs down, can do it. So it's not just all on the zoning enforcement officer, of which we only have a part-time one who's got a lot on his plate.
And then,
So that's all it is, to allow someone else to be able to take these signs down.
and then we restructured the numberology so it fits in a more cohesive, as a bylaw.
Okay, I can't, speak to that. but-
Before it was, the graph of who, what, where, and when, but now the bylaw goes first, and then the graph is afterwards. Ms. Hewings?
Thank you, through you. So, Jen, part of the problem has been that we've had a part-time, a building commissioner is supposed to be also the zoning enforcement officer, the ADA officer, a couple other things. We've had only a part-time person. You can't do zoning enforcement at part-time hours, so that's why nothing happened. I don't think it has anything to do with the person in that position down there. The goal, well, you heard that last night. The goal is ultimately, as soon as we can, to maybe hire someone who can be a building commissioner / zoning enforcement officer. So these things can't happen. But I just wanted people to know that was what was going on.
Personally, I'm in favor. I like the changes, and it gives the town the ability to respond in a quicker and more appropriate manner.
So I just also wanted to add that I think since a building commissioner is a town zoning enforcement officer, that say on page 2, where it lists, says the building commissioner or any other person designated by the town administrator, which I also like, by the way, John, but it should say building commissioner / zoning enforcement officer, I think. So that occurs 4 times in that paragraph.
Any other discussion? Please, please.
Just a little bit, I don't quite, haven't been following this, but basically, why would you not let the DPW get involved and do it at no cost instead of hiring a contractor to do it and getting the cost out there?
No, that's exactly what we discussed last year. I had asked, like, can't the DPW do it? And it was, according to the bylaw, it's only the zoning guy.
Right.
So, like, Jim couldn't tell John Woods or Dave Seatontoff, please go down there.
And this way.
So,
put-
yes, the town administrator could say, hey, John or Dave, like, would you go do it?
Yes.
That's totally the intention, to just give
appoint.
someone else in the town the ability to do that.
Yeah, okay. Sounds good.
Definitely not hire someone else.
Any other discussion?
I have a couple.
Please, Ms.
I
Hewings?
just had a question. You're recommending to have it building commissioner / zoning enforcement officer?
No, building commissioner / zoning enforcement officer. building, sorry. And it occurs 4 times on page 2 and once on page 1. And also, that, I think, helps because if we don't have a full-time building commissioner in the near foreseeable future, the town administrator can designate someone as the temporary zoning officer.
It'll
So-
give the town the ability to respond to these
Yeah,
complaints.
Exactly. So I just had, is this a sec time to bring up other stuff? Because I don't want to make this complicated.
On the sign?
Yeah, on the
in
sign
regards to-
bylaw.
Okay.
So I'm wondering, where are the sections on illumination and colors? Have they been totally eliminated?
No, this just extracted out the areas that were going to be changed.
Oh, okay. Because frankly, I don't know how everyone else feels, but I know that at one point, internally illuminated lights were allowed. And that was something that, when I was on the planning board, we did not want to allow because of the rural character of the town. So it was only allowed for lights to shine on the letters rather than from inside. And personally, I'd like to see that redone and put back.
It hasn't been removed, has it? No.
No, they allow internal illumination now, as far as I understand.
I thought there was a special permit for the fire department.
Well,
Yeah,
no, because I was at a town meeting and it was part of one of the zoning, this is a couple of years back. And personally, I was really shocked because some of us had worked really hard to make sure that didn't happen.
Neon signs all through the town. I get it.
Yeah,
I'm afraid that's something we'll have to take up after.
yeah, and
we
that's
figure
fine.
up at the zoning, at the planning board hearing.
Okay.
The only other thing, and this is just a question, is, well, 2, footnote number 5 on page 3. I don't see a number 5 in the chart, so I'm not sure what it's referring to. That's my first question. And the second one is, when you're looking at window signs on page 3 and 4 and 6, it says 1 sign is allowed per business, 30% of the window area. So, and this is not to single out any particular business, but what do you do about a store that has, 75% of its windows covered with signs? I mean, according to the bylaw, if you can only having only 1 per business seems a little strict.
Unless it's on a corner.
But there are quite a few businesses in town whose windows are plastered, way more than 30% of the windows covered. So I didn't know if that was an inconsistency you might want to address.
Well, I would think it would be inconsistent on the business, not so much the town.
So you're suggesting that's an enforcement issue?
Yes.
Okay.
And again, the ability to designate the removal of such signs would
Yep.
would fall under the town administrator. Maybe the DPW isn't the one to actually, or maybe they are, depending on the circumstances, to
Yep. No,
enforce that particular issue.
that makes sense. I think that was all I had.
I would think that would come up with the licensing.
And then just, so this is just the changes you see here were some changes, really just to kind of make some small changes. I really think not this year, but next year, look into rehabbing the whole bylaw so that all these other concerns are addressed,
Okay.
and then make it much more simpler for a prospective business owner to understand the bylaw, as well as the people who have to enforce it, 'cause
That makes sense.
there's a lot of things that you just say, okay, well, what is a marquee canopy sign, and you have no guidance anywhere to let you know what that is, and then what a sign company is proposing and labeling it is different than what you have here on the bylaw, so we need some fixes, but the idea was to make some temporary changes until we had a chance to really look at the whole thing and do a big change on it.
Any more discussion? I will entertain a motion.
I was
Please,
just,
Adam.
thank you, Mr. Chair. I was just going to make a point similar to sort of what Jim just highlighted, and I'm not a sign expert. I don't pretend to be one, but I do know that in the past, this topic has come up. Certain citizens in town that are sign experts, Mr. Allegrini specifically, has publicly posted on social media, things like that, that he has a lot of suggestions and recommendations, things that he has fielded from customers that they'd like to do to signs here in town, but have been unable to do so because of the way the bylaw is written. So at one point in the past, he posted a lengthy sort of explanation of things that he'd like to see changed within the bylaw. I looked for it. I could not find it, unfortunately, but I'm sure he'd be willing to provide it if someone reached out to him. So my thought was, when I saw this on the agenda, that we would have sort of a broad-reaching or a broad strokes approach to revising the bylaw. I understand the
We have
intent.
that ability, but we're working on, again, limited time, and we've set the foundation for the other two items on our agenda, so I would, and we have that ability to do, but I think it's going to have to wait till after February 5th, and then we can approach and deal with some of the other subjects.
I think it's important to take a look at the whole thing and for the public to know that we're considering that as opposed to just a scalpel approach at one thing because one board member had a proposed revision. It might be bad optics, but I understand the concept.
Well,
and
this was
I
the
think it's fine.
proposed revision for the town meeting of last year. It wasn't necessarily one person's particular. This is what the planning board had agreed to present at the town meeting, but pulled the warrant articles because we were only dealing with financial issues for the most part at the last town meeting. Yes, please, Ms.
Chairman?
Mello.
All I wanted to say was if number 5, as Sarah pointed out, does not relate to anything on any of the charts, then maybe we should just take number 5 out on page 3.
I thought it related to political signs, but I could be mistaken.
I believe the 5 does, I just have to,
I think the building department is the one that issues the permits for local elections.
Yes. Yeah, they're not technically permits, they're, you fill out the paperwork, pay 25, it's a refundable deposit.
Yeah.
So, but the political unlighted has an asterisk after it on page 6, it doesn't have a
5.
5, yeah. I just, maybe, Fran, because this is I'm sorry, Mr. Chair.
No, please.
Maybe, Fran, because this is excerpted, it's possible that, like,
It is somewhere.
you know, yeah, like on a chart that just came
Isn't
before this or
included here.
something. I don't
Yeah.
know, yeah. So are you entertaining a motion?
I am.
Oh, I'd like to move that we adopt the changes suggested here that were proposed for last year's town meeting.
With the edits that you recommended.
Yes, please.
Do I hear?
I'll second that.
All right. Any further discussion on the matter? Seeing none, I will ask for a vote. Anybody in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Anybody abstaining? It appears we have a unanimous recommendation on this one. Thank you, everyone. Now, as far as the townhouse bylaws, I think we did a pretty good foundation on it, but we never actually got to the setback issue as listed in, it might be 3580. I'm sorry, 3961. I believe that is 60 and 40, and the question was whether or not to move it back to 4025. Ms. Mello brought up the point last time that 50 feet is what residential everybody else has, and it's the expected setback, and I tend to believe with her. I agree with her, but I also believe that the 40 feet for over 55 housing is acceptable. It's not a requirement. may be done by the planning board, but it would allow excess development and more open space on the property. But please feel free to discuss, because I would like to make a recommendation this evening on that particular one. And then we can go over other issues that people might have found that haven't been discussed. Please, Ms.
You,
Mallow.
Mr. Chair, because of the ambiguity and the way this paragraph of 3961 is written, and the cross-outs, and, you know, we talked about, it's actually two different sections, the 3960. I would like, before we vote on this, to have that whole paragraph rewritten with clarity, so we actually know what we're voting on.
3961.
And if I may, Mr.
Yes.
Chair, I agree, that's because that discussion got all twisty-twiny, and I wasn't about to attempt that, because I wasn't really sure where we had ended up with that, so.
Structures located, right, because it says that the structures can be, it's currently at, the structures should be located at a minimum of 60 feet or 40 feet, depending on whether it's standard or over 55 housing. But the problem is that is also the same number as the buffer zone, the natural vegetative buffer zone requirement. So, thoughts on the subject? I would recommend making the buffer zone 50 feet and 35 feet, and requiring a 10-foot from the buffer zone before any sort of development can begin. That would, honestly, it'd push the 55 and older out to 45 feet, and it would push the standard residential back to 60.
So, Mr. Chair?
Yes, please.
I was just going to suggest to Fran's point, maybe 3961 should just read, buffer areas, all dwellings and structures shall be located at a minimum of 50 feet, or may be reduced to a minimum of 40 feet for over 55 housing at the planning board discretion from all adjacent properties, period. And then a new section, perhaps, saying essentially all the same wording. I don't know how you want to do that, 3961.1 and 3960.
Or A and B. Buffer
61.2,
zones, A
all
and
dwellings
B.
and structures shall be located at a minimum of 100 feet from adjacent surface waters or wetlands. And then I think,
And then there would have to be a C.
and then there would be a C, buffer areas, talk about,
Should be retained in their natural
Natural
vegetative
state, yep.
state. I would put buffer zones shall retain in their natural vegetative state, and I would change it to where the 50-foot and the 40-foot
Yep.
for over 55, I would put that as A. And then I would put Part B as 60 and 40. And then Part C as 100-foot from adjacent surface waters.
right,
We're just gonna go through that again. So 3961A,
3961A, just as my recommendation is, so for discussion, should be the description of the buffer zone, which is, buffer areas shall be retained in their natural vegetative state to the maximum extent feasible where the 60 or 50 or 40, whatever this board is recommending, or 40 feet for over 55 of natural vegetation is not adequate to screen the development, the board may require additional plantings. I would put the description of that as A.
okay, so
I'm
that's
sorry.
3961A.
Mr. Chair, I thought we were saying that 3961A was the first part of the buffer zones that talks about the minimum number of feet from adjacent properties,
And that would be
and that,
the description of what the 100 feet
No, that notes.
Okay.
This
I
is,
see what you're saying.
so it's three parts. The dwellings and structures, a minimum of whatever feet from adjacent properties.
Right.
Then 61B would be dwellings and structures shall be located a
Well,
minimum
see,
of,
the problem is that A says all dwellings and structures, but I'm suggesting that buffer areas as a description shall be retained in their natural vegetative state.
but that's
As-
61C.
I would recommend that putting it as A as the description, because,
Oh, I see what you're saying. Okay.
and then going on
Because it
to-
describes what they are. Okay,
Right,
Gotcha.
and then you can talk about where the structures can be
Okay,
placed as B and C.
gotcha. Is that,
But that's my recommendation, but that's open for discussion. But I think one of the most important parts, because of what the changes that were recommended, were moving the buffer zone from 60 feet to 40 feet, and from 40 feet to 25 feet. And I think 25 feet is a little, like, as was brought up by Ms. Mello at the last meeting, when you buy a property, you're expecting that the other property owners have to follow relatively similar bylaws, and 25 feet is very, very tight quarters for people, even if it's a natural vegetative buffer. But I would like to hear what people think. I would recommend 50 and 40, or 50 and 35, with a 10-foot space available, so, because you can't build a house right up against a natural vegetative buffer,
okay.
and that would push it, that would retain the dwellings and structures at 60 feet, and 45 feet.
60 and 45?
That's just my recommendation as where the structures begin, but I would recommend a 50 and a 35-foot buffer zone
Oh,
of
okay.
natural vegetative
35, okay.
matter, and then, because otherwise you're just asking people to go out and cut trees down and put a little garden or put a little shed out in back of their property, and
Okay,
that leads to other issues.
okay. So if I may, for my own clarity, so we're suggesting that 3961 dot A is buffer zone shall be retained in their natural vegetative state to the maximum extent feasible, where the 60-foot buffer or 35-foot buffer for over 55 housing.
50 and 35.
I think that's right, that's what I meant to say, sorry.
Okay, yeah.
Of natural,
50 and 35. Yep,
this is in the, so this is kind of like the definition of the buffer area, the way Connie was pointing out. And then the whole rest of that is,
And then I would just add 10 feet for where the building starts.
I'm sorry?
And then all dwellings and structures should be located a minimum of 60 feet, or maybe reduced to 45 feet for over 55 houses. Because after the buffer, people need room. You can't,
Okay. So that would be 3961.B. All dwellings,
sure?
all dwelling structures shall be located a minimum of 60 feet or may be reduced to a minimum of 45 feet for over 55 housing. The planning board's discretion from adjacent properties. Now, you correct me if I'm wrong, and then 3961.C is all dwellings and structures shall be located a minimum of 100 feet from adjacent surface waters or wetlands. Did I get that right?
It sounds clear to me.
Okay.
I'd like to hear what other people think. It isn't about me. Nobody's building a house next to my house, so. Please,
All right.
Ms. Bogart.
Through you to Fran. Fran, last time you said houses have the 50-foot setback?
yep.
Okay, so then with that, and especially since a lot of this committee is about matching the TDR to the townhouse thing, I don't know why we would change townhouses from the house setback. I just feel like it would be
Excellent.
easier to
Oh, that's
keep,
a great point.
I just feel like let's keep everything the same. If we're trying to
So
clear stuff up, if we reduce it from 60 at all, which I'm not a fan of, I think making it 50 makes sense for continuity in all,
I agree.
Dwelling
Yes, I
structures.
agree. And I would recommend that, again, there be that 10 feet for people to walk around the building, whatever the case may be.
yeah, I just
Sorry.
don't think anything should go below 50 for consistency's sake.
Right, and we are looking to put more density in one area of a lot while leaving open space in other areas, and that's part of what we're looking for. Ms. Mello?
And I understand the consistency, but a single-family dwelling is a lot different than multiple units in an area. And I don't think 60 feet is unreasonable when you're adding density to a neighborhood. So the 50 feet is for a single family.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know, that's just my opinion. If the committee wants to go with 50 for the setback, then it is consistent, but this is very different than a single-family lot.
Mr. Tripp, please, if you're quick.
You know, I'm a tax-paying citizen too, and I deserve at least the dignity to be able to speak out on a project that my company owns in this town and pays taxes on.
Mr. Tripp, excuse me, Mr. Tripp, I'm not here to defend myself. I am here to allow you to speak this evening. I am allowing you to speak in front of this committee. I've been very generous with this committee's time.
I'd like to address some of the changes in this and give you some of the unintended consequences of what's happening with these changes. Okay?
If you make it brief, I will allow it.
First, if you're unfamiliar with downsizing, every project based on the changes that are being proposed in this, that abuts a power line or abuts water, which throughout the town, cranberry growers and hundreds of residents do, you're basically devaluing their property by now taking what was buildable or counted towards buildable and taking it away from them without them knowing.
In what sense are
In
you?
one sense, when you take a buffer and you move it, which is currently allowed in several sections of the bylaw, it's not just this, you're now also creating conflicts in the other sections of the bylaw by these changes because you're taking away the consistency. But that's like what I'm trying to say.
Actually, we were reducing, excuse me, we were talking about reducing the buffers, if I'm not mistaken, from the proposed 60 to,
Currently, they're 25 feet, okay, if you do a 55 plus, correct?
according to this, it says they're 60 and 40 feet according to our current bylaws under the townhouse development.
Under the TDR bylaw, it takes you down to 25 feet.
We
Okay, so
can-
right there, you're creating a conflict.
But we're not
Because
talking
We
TDR.
haven't.
No,
we
no,
haven't
we're not.
determined
If you look at the
TDR.
TDR bylaw, it says that to create a receiving area, you use other sections of the town's bylaws.
But we're not talking about it tonight. We already said that we're talking about the townhouse bylaw. If I can't talk about it as far as density goes, then I want to say.
I understand. Excuse me.
They're inherently related to each other. They're inherently related to each other.
Yes.
There's
No,
six
no,
sections
dude,
of the bylaw
don't.
that all relate
I
to
gotta
this,
get
and that's
my-
why the townhouse development was brought up, is because of the lack of consistency between the TDR bylaw and the townhouse.
Right, and we will have to address that at the meeting where the TDR bylaws are on the agenda, yes. I can see where there's a conflict, but there's a current conflict with the existing laws, is there not?
Yes.
Well, let me explain to you.
And we're trying to address
The
that
unintended
now.
consequence of downzoning people's property is this. If you look at the section where you can no longer count land under a power line easement to do your NULA, you're basically taking away those citizens' value of their land.
Is that usable land? Is that buildable land?
It's still
Mis-
counted, it's counted towards open space.
No,
The other issue you
Mr.
create
Chair?
is an illegal
Oh, 1
precedent.
minute, please.
Illegal precedent, because a townhouse development is like a condo association. One of the changes you wanted to make was to require that all the land be given to the town or conservation agent. What happens if that open space is recreational, such as a golf course? You create a legal conflict between the town and the land.
That's, I'm afraid that's in our existing bylaw already.
It isn't. What you added is different.
What we added? What did we add that's
Mr. Chair,
different?
I added something, I mentioned it at the last meeting, and
Yeah.
I have
Oh, that
added
it
it.
be put into,
Just trying to save.
So that-
problems.
so that pa- excuse me.
Doesn't affect us.
I get that.
So that power lines/utility easements don't count as open space.
That's a take.
Right.
And so, and you can't build under them either, which is, I think Loring's point. But the reason I brought that up, and the committee can disagree with me if they want to, but the reason I brought that up is because in my experience and opinion, open space should be meaningful open space. To me.
And I can understand
Yeah,
that.
to me, having power lines running through a development is not really meaningful open
Right,
space.
and I understand your point that it's a commercial development if there's power lines on it, and there's safety issues and commercial development on that property. But that's what we're here to discuss this evening, yes.
So there's that issue that I just brought to your attention. It doesn't affect us, even though we have power lines on our project and we have wetlands on our project. We're already grandfathered because we filed preliminary subdivision. So if the intent was to try to stop the project on Silver Street, it's irrelevant.
There's no intent to stop any,
Well, no, I'm just saying that that's.
Project.
That comment, it doesn't affect us, but it does affect hundreds of unknown citizens out there. When you change a buffer to 50 foot, the reason why it's changed from 50 foot is because it's a smart growth bylaw, so that you cluster and use less land and put more houses on smaller areas. When you start increasing these buffers and setbacks, you wipe out the smart growth bylaw.
well.
now,
Basically start using more land than-
excuse me.
than what it was intended to do.
excuse me, I thought the recommendation from the committee was that power lines not be listed and easements not be listed under net usable land area.
Correct.
What it reads here, and what I brought up last time was under section 3950, under open space requirements. It says open space shall exclude required building envelopes, buffers to adjoining properties, and I added in the full company of this committee, I didn't do this, secretly, and power line/utility easements, so.
So maybe there was a misunderstanding, because my understanding was that it not be included in the net usable land area.
Well, you can't build on them anyway, so.
Yes, but I'm not entirely certain, but I believe they're included in the net usable land area
Well,
right
they
now.
they shouldn't be.
Yes, yeah.
You should find out what
Yeah.
can and can't go there, because you can't build a house right under the power line.
The whole point of the exercise is to generate 50% open space, of which the power line will be counted at. It can be used as recreational open space. We have a project in Walpole. We put a 3-hole golf course underneath the power line, so the whole community uses it. The problem is that that's usable land and valuable to that community. When you take that off the table and say it can't be counted into the NULA, you're devaluing those people's property without their knowledge.
Well,
Okay, the other issue is when you.
Excuse me,
25
please.
setback-
It's
Mr.
actually,
Mackey?
it's not, it doesn't say it can't be
Wait,
counted as the
excuse me,
NULA.
both of you, please. Mr. Mackey?
I just want to say that if you own a piece of property with an easement on it, that easement is yours.
Yes.
So it's your property, but you just can't build on it
Right.
because the electric company or the gas company, whoever has that, has to be able to drive a truck or be able
Right.
to access that property. But it is counted as whoever owns that property, that
Taxed on.
that you're taxed on it and it's
Oh, yeah.
your property.
I wasn't suggesting that it not be part of the NULA. I was suggesting it
Right.
not count as part of the open space, that's all.
Well, I'm not, I think that's something we're going to have
Create a
to,
conflict
Yeah, no,
with
that's
your
fine.
recreational section of your
Excuse me,
bylaw.
you haven't been
Open
recognized.
space is countable.
so, but it is counted as net usable land area currently, even
Yeah, I
though,
believe so.
even though it's unbuildable. I believe you're right.
Yeah, I mean, if
And-
you own 10 acres and you have an easement going through it, you don't say you have to deduct that easement from the 10 acres.
Right.
You own the 10 acres.
Right.
Right.
Although you just can't build on it. Why you couldn't use that as, for other reasons, I mean, you could still use it as a park or a recreation
Okay.
area.
I see your
I
point.
mean, long as you don't place any structures on it.
Yep.
you know.
And there's no safety issues and there's no state requirements for building within certain areas of high-tension wires or power lines?
None that I know of, as long as you stay out of the easement area.
Ms. Bogart?
I don't think that this is a healthy, productive discussion, and I think there's too many references to a certain project, and I said at the first meeting, I would never support changing a bylaw for a specific project. So
One
I
way or
would
the
like,
other, I call.
I would like to make a motion to recommend to the planning board that this not be brought to town meeting this year until it can be fully fleshed out, section by section, not just these, with an overall scope thinking of the town. So I would like to make that motion that we recommend the planning board do not take this up for town meeting. Because I just don't think this discussion is going the way that it should be.
Okay, just to clarify, that these are recommendations that we make to the planning board. This
Right.
isn't, we won't be presenting this, there'll be public hearings, and the planning board at the end of the public hearings will,
Yeah. So I recommend that we recommend to the planning board to not do this year.
completely off the board. and-
Completely off. Because I just don't think that we have enough time to make any sort of recommendation, good or bad. Planning board can do what they want, but I make a motion, we recommend that they do nothing about it for this town meeting. That's my motion.
A motion's been made, do I hear a second?
I will second that motion.
All right, any further discussion? Please? Sorry, John.
Very similar to what Jen has, but we've been talking about this TDR thing since at least September. We've had a few meetings. I spoke to a number of citizens in town. Nobody's in favor of more density. They don't want anything to do with it. And I see it being pushed. Maybe somebody's got an agenda, maybe they don't. But it just appears that way every meeting I come to. So I'd have to go along with Jen, push this off.
Okay.
There's no reason to do
I
it
will
now.
say that,
We have an existing law now in town that's worked well for many years.
okay, I will say that some of our bylaws allow for extended density, and it's something that we will have to bring up and face in the future, because, well, we got lots of high-density areas in the town that maybe aren't going to conform, or maybe might not be worth it, depending on the housing market in the future. All right. Any further discussion?
I would just, through you, Mr. Chair, I would just say that I agree with a lot of what Jen said, in the sense that I just don't think we're ready to act, and unfortunately, if we act and make changes, it could have unintended consequences. I'll be honest, I'm trying to follow along here. I got 4 different versions of this specific bylaw in front of me, and it's really hard to even understand what we would be voting on.
Yep.
So I just like to have my head wrapped around it better.
Sure.
And so unfortunately, if we were to force, move forward with some sort of vote tonight, I'd have to vote against it, because I'm not really sure what the impact of these changes would be, and I just think we need to think it through more.
All right.
I'm good.
Mr. Chair?
Please, Ms. Yu.
Just through you, since you and Bruce are both on the planning board, though, I strongly recommend at some point that you make sure those restrictions that you talk about when it comes to affordable and open space, be really precise as to how that gets done, because too many times it just, not necessarily you guys, but I mean, in the past, it says, put a restriction, but no one really knows what that means or how to do it, and it needs to be spelled out. This is like the legal spelling out of how that gets done, so I'm fine actually with putting it off. I don't have a problem with
That would
but-
be a fair recommendation to make to the planning board, though.
Yeah, I mean, it's a
Something
very
there.
strict, like, here's how you do it, folks. That
But
would just be my thought.
we have a different motion on the table.
I understand.
And that is
I
to
understand.
table it till we have more time to
Yep.
flesh it out. So after the town meeting, if it's available to the committee, because it might not be, in all honesty, because I don't know where the planning board goes and whether we're going to have to deal with this regardless of the recommendations of the committee. I just want you to know
Yeah.
that we might have to deal or talk about this regardless.
Planning board does what it wants. I just think we think it shouldn't happen at this point.
Excellent. Any further discussion? Please.
Got to speak
Oh,
again?
sorry.
Okay. Just, it's inevitable, the town's going to grow, and I can see there's going to be needs in the future, but I think, as Jen spoke, we need a lot more clarity in this. We've kind of bounced around a bit, and we don't
Sure.
have a definite track of even where our map is, where the density is going to go. So maybe that
Well,
would be
actually,
the future.
the townhouse development is allowed on 10 acres in residential zones, I believe, and 3 acres in village zones. So this is already allowed as it stands.
Do we have the village zones mapped out yet?
We have 3 village
Yeah.
zones, and
We do.
4 village zones actually in town.
Oh, okay.
I think there's only 3.
There's North Carver, Center Carver, South Carver, and I could be mistaken on this, but at the corner of Center Street at the bog there, I think is a forgotten village district.
Stories Corner?
Stories Corner?
Is that what
If
you-
it's not, but it's not officially designated a village. If you look at the zoning map, I don't think it's officially designated as a village, but, oh, East Carver, you're right. You're right. Connie's right. There are 4 villages.
Happens
I
occasionally.
totally forgot about that one.
Send a text
Good
to my
point.
wife when you get a chance. Mr. Mackey?
I will.
I was just gonna ask, does that include the townhouse definition? Were you gonna do anything with that tonight, or?
I think that needs to be addressed because it's very limiting.
But, so you
Can-
still wanna
can we-
discuss that tonight?
Yes,
Okay, all
but,
right.
but it might get tabled, so. Well, because this is being pushed off, the definition might get pushed off, but, see, any more discussion? Seeing no more discussion, the motion on the table is to recommend that this be tabled till after the town meeting when it can be properly vetted. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Any abstentions? So that's unanimous. This will be tabled till after the town meeting.
If I could just say that,
Please.
thank Sarah for doing all the work
Yes,
on the
I-
bylaw, that is.
Thank
Quite
you.
impressed.
But we
actually.
we'll still save that, of course.
Sure, yeah.
I really thought that it was good what you did, so.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you
you,
for
Bruce.
that.
Appreciate it.
Definition of the townhouses, I didn't get that paper, but I have it here.
You want to see mine?
Please, I'll just. Currently, it reads that a townhouse, group of buildings on a single lot containing more than 2, but not more than 5. So 3, 4, and 5 is what's considered in the townhouse. The townhouses I was always familiar with were more of row houses, so think we should consider changing it to containing 2, but not more than 5, rather than more than 2.
Yeah.
To remove the words more than and replace with at least, or just remove them.
I'll make that motion, Mr. Chair.
Well, it's, okay, yeah. Do I hear a second?
I second that, yeah, that's confusing.
All right, so the definition currently reads, and I'm just going to read it for clarity. Townhouses shall mean a single building or group of buildings on a single lot containing more than 2, but not more than 5 dwelling units per building. Created in accordance with the provision of section 3900 herein. And that limits townhouses to 3, 4, or 5 dwelling units per building. I think we'd like to broaden that, but
Mr. Chair, if I may, the reason I was thinking to change it to read at least 2 is because the townhouses on South Meadow Road, for example, are 2, and then 2, and then 2.
right.
So, yeah, so that makes it more than one dwelling
Right.
unit,
And it
but no more than
clarifies-
5.
It clarifies the subject rather than
Yeah.
removing the
Yeah.
phrase, so.
Well, I just have a question about that.
Mm-hmm.
I understood these, and maybe I'm wrong, these units on Main Street up here, the 6 units, I understood those to be classified as townhouses, is that correct?
Are they townhouses or duplexes?
I'm asking,
I-
I'm not sure.
I believe it was approved as
It was
a
approved.
townhouse development.
Okay. It was
But
approved before.
those are single units.
It's single buildings containing 2, well, it should have been 3, but according to the bylaw as it stands.
They're single units.
Single buildings with 2 units, is that
It's
what
a
you?
single building with 2 units.
With 2 units,
No, they're
No.
single units.
This-
They're not attached,
okay.
but they are classified as a townhouse.
Wait, is there 3 of them?
There's 6 of them, but they're all standalone.
They're single-family homes essentially.
Oh, they were all
Well,
6, okay.
They are attached between the units.
Yeah, I thought there
There is
was
a connector,
3 units of 2.
Oh, so there are connectors?
They are connected, they have a roof between
Okay.
and a patio in between.
Next to,
Yeah,
across the
Yeah.
street from Fiesta Charter.
Yeah.
There's the individual freestanding buildings, there's no connection to them.
I thought
6
that they were,
individual structures.
That's right.
Well, Bruce, you guys approved them, so.
Please, Mr. Tripp.
This is the reason why there's a problem right now, is this definition, okay? We currently have an approved project of 54 single-family units, standalone, just like the project that was approved, that violates the bylaw across the street, it's non-conforming. We're in the same situation, and that's why we've been trying to get relief from this, by straightening this out, without getting to a legal situation of, are we non-conforming on a $30+ million project? It's a huge liability and crisis we have.
Right.
That we're trying to work cooperatively with the town to address. It's been approved, I've got 5 building permits being built, I can't move ahead with the project because this definition doesn't meet what the board not only approved once, the original special permit, but then talked us to reduce the duplexes, get rid of them, and modify them again to now be all single-family units. That's the simple problem that just needs to be.
That's right. I think
That's
just,
the
it's,
simple
if you're
step.
saying there's conflict with existing buildings in the town, that would be just fine, thank you. So, as you can see, there's conflicts with projects that are proposed and already have been done. So, what happens is, when you buy the house and the bank investigates the house, and they find it's non-conforming, then there's issues. This will bring townhouses into a conforming unity within the town.
I
Please.
got that, but we've already voted that we don't have enough.
This is separate, this is not the townhouse bylaw, no.
Okay.
This is,
Just the
this is the definition of what is a townhouse, which is section 8900 of our bylaws is the definition, I think, but I could be.
So we're saying that going forward, we would not allow a development like Main Street again?
No individual aren't allowed anyways, but we're not allowing 2. In other words, think of like maybe Philadelphia, Washington DC, where a townhouse is 2, it's really 1 building with a common wall and 2 dwelling units in it. The brownstones, and I see them a lot in Europe.
right, so the current townhouse bylaw has a restriction of no more than 25% for duplex or 2-family units. And but the bylaw itself conflicts with that because it says more than 2 and then no more than 5 dwellings.
Mm-hmm.
So we have an inherent conflict between that section of the current bylaw, the townhouse portion of the bylaw, and then with the definition of townhouse.
And that the bylaw says that no more than, you can't create more than 25% of the existing townhouses in the town, and that,
Well, no more than 25% of the total units for the townhouse development can be duplex.
So they've got to be more
Can
than
you-
2.
Right, so the remaining 75% of the units have to be more than 2.
So if
Jim, where
you've got
does-
a townhouse development with 100 units in it, you can have 25 twos and then 75, if the rest of it has to be more than 2.
It would actually be 12 units.
Yeah,
versus 2 units.
thank you.
Jim, I have the zoning bylaws out. Can you just tell me which one that is?
what number is it?
So townhouse development is 3,900.
Yeah, I'm right there. I'm seeing 25% here.
Yeah, the number of
But-
townhouse units in a proposed townhouse development, oh, that's the combination, oh, and then, there's another 5% of the total existing dwellings in the town, okay, and then down here, 3945, duplexes and/or two-family dwellings shall be allowed in a townhouse, but not more than 25% of the total number of units in that development.
Okay, so we're right there.
Duplexes.
So 3945.
And shall
For anyone
meet
who-
all requirements, at no time shall more than 25% of the total number of units proposed in the townhouse development be comprised of duplexes or two-family structures. But, so what are you saying is the issue with that, Jim?
It's just that, in the definition, let's see what that.
And that's why it's 3 to 5 rather than inclusive of the 2?
So, what does it say? Containing more than, so the definition says townhouse should be more than 2, but not more than 5. So to me, I read that as 3 plus.
Yeah.
But in that section, is it 3945, it says you could have duplex or two-family townhouses no more than 25%. But if you go by this definition, they're not allowed, the two families. So it's just kind of a conflict between
Okay.
But
this
you-
section, the definition, and then also that particular section in the townhouse development bylaw.
Please, Ms. Mello.
But we could change the definition of a townhouse and still have the 25% on 2.
Right, so the two of them, if you make that change, then that would allow that provision, 3945, to be activated, legally, I guess.
Okay, so we could still say it's 2 units or more, but in a development, only 25% of the development can be 2 units. 75% has to be 3 to 5.
Right.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
So write that, figure out.
Well, it's already there. It's
Yeah.
already there. So if we just change the definition of
Right.
townhouse, it still works.
So can you rewrite that into something that works right now?
Well, that's why we're changing that's exactly what's in there.
That's exactly what it says.
Okay, so no words have to be changed?
No, we
It's
can
right the way
still
it
say, we
Okay.
can say a townhouse
Yeah.
is a unit of, or a dwelling of 2 or more units, 2 to 5. 2 to 5 units.
Yep.
But the bylaw says, that's fine, that's a townhouse, but only 25% of your development can be 2 units.
Right.
Right, so I
That
think,
makes perfect sense.
so I think earlier, the chairman said, strike out more than, and this is in the definition, and put at least 2, or maybe it was.
That's
Ms.
right,
Hewin.
at least, yeah.
2, but not more than 5.
Yeah,
Right.
at least 2, and, not.
Yep.
And then that way, that corrects that problem.
And did we have a motion made?
I'd make that motion since it's on my paper.
And you seconded it, if I'm not
Yep.
mistaken?
Thank you.
All right. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor of the revised townhouse definition to change the words more than to at least? All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Any abstentions? It's unanimous.
Who seconded that?
Bruce.
Mr. Mayor.
Okay.
Can I just ask a question, Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
So how do we deal with the legal liabilities now with all these projects that have been approved that don't meet the definition of townhouse as approved and being built?
How do they
What's
not?
our legal recourse to us?
Well, you tell me how it does, how, wait. What is your question, Mr. Tripp?
Simply, like, we still haven't addressed the issue that's pretty much got all these projects either non-conforming or approved with no way to move forward, that are frozen, that are, basically tying up tens of millions of dollars. I just don't, when we talk to Jim and the planning board, we thought we were in a process to try to address these concerns and fix the bylaw so that our project is non-conforming, even though it's been approved twice by the planning board.
Are they individual houses?
Yes.
Then I can't address that. That wasn't made while I was on the planning board. That is not something that I could have voted for because it's an individual house lot and it's not, it didn't fit the definition of townhouse as was in the bylaw. That's not my issue. That's a pre-existing issue.
And just to interject, so we had discussion with our council and the council for Bristol Brothers were supposed to have a discussion, and then, so it's being, that whole process is being handled right now between the, the two attorneys, and then figure out what the process is moving forward for that particular project.
And you'll have to excuse me for, I wasn't on the board at the time, but what seems to be the conflict with what was approved and what the definition of townhouse that we just discussed was? I'm not seeing the connection in that this is going to clear everything up and all of a sudden everything's going to be better.
The proposal that Jim gave you basically addressed all the conflicts that are in the bylaw that the planning board felt concerned with, that they wanted to smooth out.
Mm-hmm.
That's now off the table, and now the definition still doesn't address the issue. So, now it's lawyers kind of have to figure this out, I guess, because
Was it
this
done
would've
under,
been a simple way to
was
just-
it done under special permits?
Yes. So, that's all we've been trying to do for over 6 months, is just try to work with the town to address this.
I would like to clear up the issues. But this is not something that I was involved with from the start, so it's not something that,
The problems in the bylaw have been coming for 10 years, and every board has had to deal with them, they're part of it. It's not a lot to fix.
no, I would like to clarify it, but again, it was the recommendation of the board that the proposed changes be vetted over a longer period of time, and that's
I think it's a
why.
good idea to table that one, because the changes would not have helped the situation for the town or anyone else, so I agree with that, withdrawing that. The issue now is just, is the TDR bylaw can get it fixed, and...
It's not our job to address prior issues in the town. It's our job to address the issues that the town is facing and in the future in regards to this, and what is in the best interest of the town. As a board, that is what we're here to discuss. We're not here to clean up the messes made by other people that may or may not have been legal, because we weren't involved in that. Please, Ms. Bogart?
All right, this kind of exemplifies what I've been saying all along, where this is about one project, and the talk of lawyers, when we're just supposed to be discussing bylaws, is making me really uncomfortable. That we're I'm kind of interpreting it as a threat right now. I don't think lawyers should be anywhere in this discussion.
Well, it's the current situation, and it's simply that. The current situation is that there are lawyers involved in an issue in town.
Yeah, but I don't think the committee should be,
That is not our issue. Then we shouldn't be addressing that.
right.
We are addressing issues in the bylaws, and that's what we have to, that was what we're here to recommend, is what we feel is in the best
I just
interest
don't
of
think
the town.
talk of lawyers should influence our discussions. I think
Agreed.
inaccuracies and discrepancies and problems should.
Yeah, well, we should know all the facts regardless,
Yeah,
but that's for the town and the lawyers to work out. That's not our issue. We still have to work in the best interest of the
Yeah.
town. Ms. Mello?
I would just like to say that from meeting number 1 of this committee, I have felt very pressured by influences that, in my opinion, should not have been allowed to speak at these committee meetings.
I think
These
we
are
did-
open hearings, I'm sorry, they're open meetings, they are not open hearings. And
Well,
I'm telling you how I feel.
I agree.
I'm uncomfortable, just like Janet.
I want to have an honest, open meeting, and to do that, we need to hear from every side, people that agree or disagree, and I think that's very important.
I feel pressured.
I don't want you to feel pressured. Have you felt any pressure outside of the board here? I
No,
honestly-
the board has been fine, but this gentleman's attitude and tone and how he sits there.
Well, for the most part, he's been professional.
No, I
and
think
he
you
has-
gotta go back and look at the meetings. Meeting number 1, they set up their presentation. I don't get it. Carver should do, and this committee should do, what is right for our town, not a project.
Agreed. But we're
And all
not
we've
addressing
heard
a
is
project.
about
We're
his
not- We are
project.
not here to address any project.
Then
And
let's
that is-
stop
and that's
talking
why
about
I
his
agree.
project.
I agree. It shouldn't have been brought up that this is in regards to any project, because that is not our issue to deal with. Our issue is to deal with the bylaw as it stands as a whole and what is the best interest of the town. All right. Are we willing to move on to the solar bylaw discussion that we've started on a previous meeting? We made some,
Can I ask one question?
Yes, please.
Just on the duplexes. I see some areas, like in Wareham, they have a nice unit, a garage, and a nice unit. And to me, that makes sense because you've got separation of groups of people, families. Where if you build a unit, like turn the stereo off, and this and that, causes conflict. Is there anything in these duplex laws that separate these at all?
I don't think so.
No.
In Ireland, they'd be called the council houses,
Yeah.
because that's how they'd separate them with a garage, but I don't think that we can, unless it's out of character for the town, I think is
Is
the
that the
phrase
word?
that we use, that we can't address the architectural designs unless
Yeah,
it's like,
yeah. Is there anything on, can I ask the builder? a
you can ask
question?
anybody you
Okay.
want,
You
Mr. Tripp.
just heard what I said about the garage thing? Now, most units, do you try to put that in to separate the families, or do you just put it like an apartment booth? You know, turn the stereo down, stop making the noise next door.
Typically, in the developments that we do, if they are attached, the garages are between them, like you said.
Okay.
In your town bylaw, it requires a 30-foot setback or 1.5 times the height of the house. And typically, the fire department, that's one of their requirements to make sure that they could get equipment and everything. So there is at least a 30-foot separation within the developments themselves.
Between the
And
units?
that's out of your bylaw. That's not-
Yeah, the building envelope, yeah.
No, that's on the outside, though. How about between the units?
Between the units, if they were attached, there would be probably garages with a firewall between the two garages, and firewall between the garages themselves, building codes.
I just look at it as a town expense. When you have more people together, there's conflicts. Where if you separate them a little bit, even these single units uptown, is that a homeowner association fee, those 6 units?
I think they've been rented. They never sold.
Oh, really?
Oh,
I
okay.
think they've been leased.
So it's like one unit?
Under
Oh.
common ownership.
Yeah. Just curious. Okay, thank you. Just curious.
And just a note, we do have a Conservation Commission meeting tonight at 7 PM in this space right here.
All right. Well, we're still gonna have to handle it, or we're gonna have to pass it on, so. What is the recommendation of the committee? I feel that we have, you say it's 7 o'clock? I don't feel that we'll have time to address the solar bylaw issue. I think we'll have time to approve the minutes and close the meeting and allow the room to clear.
And it could be something, you just pass it on to the planning board, and then at that time, if everyone has commentary on it, they can come to the planning board public hearing.
Yeah,
and
excellent.
Participate that way.
So that would be approval of the minutes from 1/11/21.
I make a motion to approve the minutes of 1/11/21, and I thank Jen for doing such a thorough job.
Bang
You're
up
welcome.
job, John. Do I hear a second?
I'll second it for purposes of discussion.
All right, open it for discussion.
On page 1, I think that we need to spell out what HOA stands for. Third paragraph, Mr. Walsh said an HOA might be the case. Just, because it's a public record, a lot of people won't know. And also the last sentence of that paragraph where it says NULA. I mean, we know what that means, but that should probably be spelled out. It's just my
Yep,
take on it. On page 2, the paragraph about 2/3 of the way down starts with Mr. Holmes asked the reasoning. That one, after that first sentence, the reasoning behind wanting to increase the 10% affordable unit rate, I think we should add, these are pretty detailed minutes, and so if we're going to be detailed, I don't want to leave out things.
I'll be less detailed.
No, I wanted to add the sentence, he also asked why we were being proactive in increasing affordable units in the developments. Just a, reasonable question. And then the next sentence, Ms. Hewen said the town wants to be at least 10% to protect itself from, and I believe I said unfriendly 40B projects, because not all 40Bs are friendly, not all are unfriendly. And then the last part of that, the last part of that sentence, last line, affordable units may bring down the home values around them. I believe Mr. Holmes said, and he can correct me if I'm wrong, that new single-family market rate homes will bring in more tax revenue. And those are all my amendments.
please, Ms. Bogart.
Sarah, can I ask you to email those to Jim, because I may be detailed, but I'm not that fast.
Yes, ma'am. No, I just remember the discussion really well.
Mr. Holmes?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And to Sarah's point about the last sentence in that paragraph, where it says affordable units may bring down the home values around them, I think I remember my comment was less about it bringing down home values and much more about it shifting the tax burden to homeowners whose home values was above the affordable price. So it's not necessarily about bringing down home values, it's more a matter of shifting.
Yeah, I
the
didn't
tax
write the
burden.
bringing down home value.
No, I know.
No.
But you're
I believe that was the gist of the.
yeah, otherwise your edits were accurate, Sarah. I know you didn't write it, but that was the point, was that it shifts the tax burden to homeowners with home values above the affordable home price.
Could you
I will.
email it
Shift.
back
Absolutely.
so I can add it to the minutes?
I will, absolutely.
Thank you.
Any further recommendations?
Question?
Yes.
Yeah, this is on the 10% affordable housing. Came up last time. When you have an affordable housing unit, shouldn't it be identical to the other units?
Yes.
Inside and outside?
No, just exterior.
Why just exterior?
Well, because in order to make it affordable, they might use, instead of granite countertops or hardwood floors or 5-inch molding, they might use 3-inch molding.
Right, but then that person really has a lesser unit,
Well,
lesser price. Why don't they just, but,
no, it's true, but it's meant to not be able to discriminate from appearances in the units. In other words, if one has a garage, they all have a garage.
right. But if I have marble counters, shouldn't the affordable housing unit have a marble counter?
But then you're asking the builder to subsidize work. In other words, he'll have to put in the money
Right.
to bring that unit down to an affordable
From the overall price.
right.
Right, yeah.
And then the neighboring properties have to subsidize that difference too.
Sorry, just
Real quick.
thought it would be equal, because it did come up, yeah.
No, I
So-
see the point, though.
Yeah, so if I may, Mr. Chair, to Chuck's point, when we wrote that, though, the whole, and I get what you're saying, it kind of made me mad, too. But on the other hand, as everyone's pointed out, the builder would have to subsidize that unit. But the main thing that mattered to me was the exterior had to look the same, so no one could point and say, oh, yeah, number 5, that, the one in the middle, or whatever. You shouldn't be able to tell from the outside. And they all have to have the same heating and cooling. That's true, too. And if one has a garage, they all have to have a garage. But, it's compromise, I guess.
Yeah.
But at least from the outside, no one would have to know.
Yeah, I just thought that would be part of the cost of doing business,
Yeah,
take it out of the whole project and make
I
it
know,
the same.
I know.
Questionable.
I hear
Thank
you.
you.
They do absorb a significant cost in having to deal with the affordable units in marketing and various other aspects of that, so. All right, do I hear a motion to approve the minutes as amended?
I'll make that motion.
Any second?
A second.
Second.
All those in favor to approve the minutes as amended, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? All those abstentions? Unanimous. I will call, do we have any other further business here? I don't have my agenda printed out, so you'll have to bear with me.
Oh, the next meeting.
Yes, I was told, Jim told me that we could expect some information around the 20th for the TDRs. And our next meeting will be on the 25th.
So just for information, I did get an email from Serped, and so they have a draft of the revised TDI bylaw and the map, so I can forward that to everybody probably tomorrow.
Excellent, excellent. It's going to be a big meeting, and I would like to get one more meeting in
Mr. Chair?
prior to the February 5th deadline.
This is just me, but I have another meeting on Monday, February 1st. So I was wondering if we could have it on Wednesday, February 3rd, that last meeting?
I don't have an issue if nobody else has
Yeah.
an issue.
I don't-
So I'll have to check on Serped's availability, because they were
Oh,
going to...
no, not the January 25th meeting. I wasn't talking
Oh,
about that.
okay, I'm sorry.
I was talking about, it's listing us another meeting before the bylaws, the warrant articles are due.
Right.
And I just happen to have another meeting on both February 1st and February 2nd. So I was just suggesting February 3rd is our last meeting before the deadline.
Yeah, so I was just trying to, yeah, because if we get most of the other things taken care of, we're going to try to get the advertising submitted like on a Thursday beforehand, so we're in time for the deadline. So I guess if we had a meeting that night and we were able to make those changes, we could submit that as the article. Or we could just go ahead and take something to submit it to the paper, and then if there's any loose ends, then potentially, when it comes before the planning board, any loose ends could be addressed at the planning board.
I don't think we can fit what we need to do in just the one meeting, even if it's specifically designated for it. So I would like to schedule a second meeting, and then if we have to cancel it or we get everything done, that's easy enough to do. But would the 3rd be all right, a Wednesday night?
The Wednesday night, yep, just like tonight.
It's fine.
Not about the 3rd, just a heads up, I probably won't be here next Monday, so you'll need someone else to take the notes.
Uh-oh.
Uh-oh.
You're okay with it, Bruce?
I could never be as thorough as Jen. But,
No, I'm
He sets a
not
high
saying
bar.
take.
Take the notes, huh?
No, with the 3rd.
Meeting.
The 3rd, okay, yeah.
Yeah, I can make it. Yep.
Excellent. Then,
5 PM for both?
yes, yep. Do I need a
So
motion to close the meeting?
125, and then what was that, 1-3?
No, I think you can.
February
Oh,
3rd.
a motion to
February
adjourn,
3rd.
right?
Yeah,
February
just
3rd,
do the
2-3.
motion to adjourn. Yep.
And that's a Wednesday. So
Yeah.
I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Unanimous. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Have a good evening. Be careful. Driving home this evening?